Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, the podcast where Senator Joseph Cryan talks about the latest in New Jersey's 20th Legislative District. This week's guest, State Senator Jon Bramnick.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another Cup of Joe. And today I am truly honored to have a colleague in the New Jersey State Senate, and for me, certainly more important, a friend. It is my absolute honor to introduce to you my friend, New Jersey State Senator from the district next door, District 21, Senator Jon Bramnick. Jon, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Joe. Good to see you, of course.
Hey, I appreciate it. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes with us. You know, today I think we want to talk a little bit about a variety of things. Your career, how you got started. Certainly I want folks to walk away with an understanding of who Jon Bramnick is and all the successful things that you've stood for and fought for in your public life and in your private life as well. But most importantly, I want to talk a little bit about, the moment that we're in, right, Jon? We've talked about this. Why does this moment call for a civil dialogue? Why does it call for bipartisan leadership, which you and I have chatted about? And it kind of led to our civility tour, which is coming up, and I hope you're going to expand upon that. So looking forward to the conversation.
Well, I'm worried because people really stay with their own cable channel or their own app, and they're glued to whatever position they're in, and then they get fed more and more information that's negative about the other side. So what happens is you start to develop us versus them. And when there's us versus them, they're not hearing both sides. You and I have access to a lot of information. I think we try to listen to everyone's argument. But if you're sitting at home and you're only really on your app or you're listening to one channel, you start to believe that the other side is the enemy or they're evil. And that creates, to me, not only incredible hate, but it's dangerous.
Well, you're right about that. And now that we have more choices, right? There was a time when we grew up where we had 2-4, right? Cronkite, Huntley, or Howard K. Smith, and that was it. And now today we have more choices on news outlets and what their views can mean than maybe any time in history.
And people also are more isolated than ever. When we grew up, I don't know about your neighborhood, but you were closer to your family. You were outside with neighbors. You weren't really glued to the internet or social media. And to me, I think some of the problems we have in society is there is not that sense of community. For example, if you live near near your family, and you weren't getting along with your parents, well, grandma was down the block, or
That's
your
right.
aunt or uncle were there, or your cousin was there, you connect. I think now what it is, it seems as if that isolated person doesn't have a connection, and then they're so isolated, they tend to lose themselves in social media.
You're right. We are more isolated, and we think sometimes, without being too judgmental on it, but the fact that we have so many more choices at home, that we can watch, for example, the TV on 24 hours on that channel that we've selected out of, Bruce used to say 57 channels and nothing on. Now it's literally 1,057 channels. And yet we've made home entertainment that we can stay there and literally not. I mean, we can DoorDash and we can do a lot of things where we just simply don't have to connect and interact with each other.
And when there was a neurosurgeon who told me there's 3 ways to get endorphins: heavy exercise, pharmaceutical drugs, and shared experiences. To me, that shared experiences, that is really the most important part of living. So you hear people say, I was with friends and we got together and we did this or went on a trip. That is a high. I think there's less of a high than ever before. And when there's less of that, less endorphins, that's a problem for society.
Yeah, we need more endorphins.
We do, and you get it from connecting with other people. And also, my father once said, if you look too closely at all your friends, you won't have any friends. That's the other thing we have to tell people. This concept of like you're all agreeing on everything and that someone did something you disagree with, to me, it's really important to have a circle of friends, relationships, And, we have dinner parties now. We have a table question. Because I don't like to go to a party where you go, oh, where do you shop? No, I don't like that. We ask questions. And I've had, and I'm sure you've had as well, based on your being a leader in your party and leader in the community. So I've had dinner parties with everybody, right? And I'll go around and say, I want you to put 4 people in your van that's going across country. Can't be friends, can't be family. Somebody from history, anyone you want, but it could be famous, not famous, but no family or friends. And we go around the table. When you have discussions like that, which is not, Trump versus Biden or Democrat versus Republican, it's amazing what you can learn about other people. So I think more conversation, more questions, and less us versus them.
I want to segue into your growing up and getting involved in politics, but since you're on that, I got to ask. Just curious, as somebody who reads a lot, do a lot of people pick authors?
No. So I can tell you I won't tell you who the famous people pick. The governors and former governors, etc. But you will get you'll get Jesus Christ.
Okay.
You'll get Martin Luther King. You'll get George Bush 41 sometimes 43. You'll get comedians. You'll get sometimes you get some beautiful actresses or somebody put beautiful actors in the van. It's interesting, and sometimes, occasionally, you will get authors. I shouldn't say that, but it's amazing sometimes who people put. And the reason I asked the question, somebody told me, I once said, this is a close friend, and they said, would you drive across country with that person for 5 days in a van? I don't know about that. That's a really close friend.
It is. John Kennedy, Jesus.
Oh, absolutely.
Elvis, I assume gets picked.
I don't remember when you said Elvis.
Really?
That's interesting. I don't remember Elvis.
Oh, yeah. I'm way off
Bruce
track.
Springsteen, people put Bon Jovi,
yeah.
and then they'll put, a chef. Feel like this, hey, listen, man, if we got to stop, I want a chef. So they put a chef in. So maybe we should do one where which New Jersey politicians you have to put in 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans.
I think we'll be having our thumbs out looking for a hitchhiking ride on that case, John.
Maybe.
But let me switch back a little bit. Tell me a little bit about
that.
where you grew up, and tell me how you got involved in public service and politics.
So I grew up in Plainfield. My dad had a store called Lazar's. It was a mom and pop stationery store, open 7 days a week for many, many years. And since I went to all the public schools in Plainfield, I went away to college and law school, and I came back to Plainfield. And my dad never had the time to get involved really in the community because he was open 7 days a week. So I ran for city council. It was my town. I went to that high school. I ran for city council in Plainfield, and I served for 7 years. And you say, well, why would you do it? Well, political science major. It's you're coming back to your hometown, and fortunately, as a lawyer, I had the time to do it, and my dad didn't. But my father-in-law, Patricia Brentano's father, he was very involved in the community, so I kind of learned from them how, you can get involved. I didn't really know that because my parents just didn't have the time to do it.
Yeah. Do me a favor, tell the story about the Halloween costume.
All right. So my dad's big part of his business was Halloween. And I worked in the store, worked the cash register. So it would be like October 30th, and I would say, Mom, I'm going to get a Halloween costume. She says, you're going to be Batman. I go, Batman? Everybody hates Batman. She goes, that's why we got extra costumes. Put on the costume.
Yeah, always a practical moment.
But when you work in the retail business, that's like politics, really. Because in the retail business, everybody comes in. You don't screen, like a law firm, you screen the people a little bit. Retail business, everybody in Plainfield came in.
Yeah. Coming from a restaurant bar family, I've always thought that it should be mandatory in public service that you're either in the retail experience, you got to be a bartender for 6 months or a server, because you want to be tired, serve a group of busy meals for an 8-hour shift.
Were you a bartender?
I was the third guy. I was never the main guy.
But you at times you were a bartender.
Oh,
right?
sure, yeah.
That's like a psychologist.
Yeah, a lot to it, yeah.
Right.
we had different days, but they were certainly fun. So you're on city council, and Patty's your beautiful wife, Patty. And what made you think about moving into the legislature and those sort of things?
Well, I got a call from Tom Kane Jr. and Bill Palatucci, and they said, we would like to have breakfast with you. And that's when Senator Bagger was retiring, and Tom Kane Jr. was going to become a senator, and it's 2002, and they go, would you want to run for assembly? I said, okay. And then I went home, and I said to Patricia, well, what do they want? They want you to run for assembly. I said, yes, but you know something, I've been building this law practice. I don't know if it's the right thing to do. You know, I'm worried. You know, I worked all these years, 20, 25 years to build a law practice, because I didn't get in the legislature until I was 50. And she goes, did you give me your word you're going to do it? I said, yeah. She goes, then you're going to do it. That's the Irish part, I think.
Yes, that's why you married up. Hey, before I forget, because I do want to ask you your transition to a senator. What drew you to the law? What inspired you to become a lawyer? What drew you to that part of professional life?
So I'm a half actor, if you know what I mean, because I do comedy. So I went to law school because it was more about political science. In other words, you come out as a political science major. I'm not sure there's a lot of jobs for a BA in political science. You know, I guess you could, I don't know, you can't be a professor. So I didn't have much choice. I had to go on to get a degree. And I always liked politics. So I figured, you know, I better go get a law degree. And then I taught for a while at Rider College for 4 years. But it wasn't because I was a deep fan of the law. It was more about I wanted to do politics, and I thought it important to go to law school.
But so you did you wanted to do politics, but weren't you also involved early in? Were you a prosecutor? Were you public?
I was city attorney in the South Bronx for the city of New York. So if you sued the city, I was the assistant corporation counsel assigned to the South Bronx. So if you tripped on a sidewalk in New York, or you got hit by a baseball in Yankee Stadium, or a police officer might have done the wrong thing, run you over, or a fire truck ran you over, I defended the city in the South Bronx.
Did you learn a lot there?
Oh yeah. Oh, I learned a lot.
Okay. So you decide you're there, you're in that position now. You decide at some point that you're going to go into public life, but you're also building a law practice that, you know, I do want to take a moment here and have our listeners understand. You're coming out of there. You're going to start a career, right? A private career. And can you talk about like how you started and where you are today?
Oh yeah. So after I left the city of New York, I worked 4 years for a firm in New York City where I was the plaintiff's lawyer. And then I decided to go to my hometown. So I had a phone in my living room, and I would call lawyers and said, I'll do a deposition for you, or I'll try a case for you. So what I did was I was a per diem, maybe that's why I like the gig attorney, a gig economy. So I would do that, and if someone asked me in New York, where do you practice law? I said, I'm New Jersey. And I'd tell the Jersey guys, because I did both states, give me your New York cases. So I'd go back and forth. I started with me, a phone in my living room, and then I rented a space at Carter, Van Rensselaer, Swenson, and Colwell for $100 a month, and I was in their basement.
Okay.
And then slowly I built a practice, and now we have 75 people.
So you went from somebody with a degree and a dream to a practice today, Bramnick Law, right?
Yeah.
75 lawyers.
27
I
lawyers
apologize,
and
yes.
75 people.
75 people,
And
I apologize.
all it is, it's really one thing. You work really hard and find good people. The most important thing is you want to work with people that you like and trust, are competent, but there's not anybody in that firm I don't like. That's the most, because it's stressful enough to be in business. It's stressful enough to be in politics. I got to work with people I like. And
you.
don't be cheap.
Don't be cheap.
My father used to say when he had the 6 or 7 employees, those people are more important than he is. He says, I can't do any of this without them. They're more important than me. And every one of my they're more important than me.
I wish I met your dad.
Let me tell you something. I can't even talk about him without. He would never say anything bad about anybody.
No.
ever.
So let's transition to when that moves in. So you're in the assembly. You've chosen to go. And what ultimately ended up providing the opportunity for you to go into or move to the New Jersey Senate?
Tom Kean went to Congress.
Okay.
So I was there for 17 years in the assembly and 10 years as the Republican leader.
So now you've been in an elevated position. You've been the Republican leader, and you moved to the Senate. And now times are changing a little bit, right? We in politics, things are changing, and our discussions are becoming different. Are they not? In that time frame.
Well, I think in the legislature in New Jersey, they're not as much us versus them. I mean, there's a few exceptions, but nationally, what we see is incredible division. On the floor of the Senate, you actually see mostly respect. And in the floor of the Assembly, other than a few exceptions, you see mostly respect. And but nationally, you're seeing us versus them.
So it was a national incident, and that kind of led to the idea of us having a chat and kind of moving on a civility tour a little bit in a discussion. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you know, when somebody gets murdered because people don't like what they're saying, it's time to act. Actually, it was your idea. And you called up and said, you know, let's consider getting a Republican and Democrat out there. And I said, yes, before you finish the sentence. But when you have someone who's murdered, and look, regardless of what they say, somebody who's murdered because of what they say, you've reached a point where we have to do something, and thank God you called and said, let's go on a college tour, and now 10 colleges have reached out already, and we already have 4 scheduled.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy in just a pretty short period of time. Which tells you there's a hunger out there for dialogue, right? By the way, everybody, I'm the Democrat and John's the Republican.
You can tell by the jacket, you know what I mean, just by dress code.
Okay.
And also, I've watched you on a number of committees, and you study the issue, and I'm not just blowing smoke here, and you ask serious questions, and you try to get down to the issue, but you do it, and you always paraphrase it, or I shouldn't say paraphrase, you always introduce it. Listen, I just want to get some information here about this, that, and the other thing. And I saw that and watched you do that for many years, and you really study it and ask substantive questions.
Well, you and I think, share a common dialogue in the fact that, you know, we work for the people that we're lucky enough to be elected and lucky enough to serve. And I think that they deserve, in the confidence that they've placed in us, they don't always have to agree with what our vote is, but they want us to understand what we're doing, right? That we're accountable for our vote, that we don't just put our hand up or we don't just say yes. And I think that's really important. I do. I think it's why you get political science degrees, and I think it's why people want to have, if you want to restore confidence in government, one of the things that folks have to do is believe that their leaders care about the position enough to understand.
But when you go and ask a question, you're not shooting from the hip, because you come in, you research the issue and ask the question. Yeah, that's a rare form of art that you don't see much.
Well, let me change that around to you. So let me shift that back a little bit. So we haven't chatted about this. What do you want the students and folks that are going to join us in hearing us? What do you want them to walk away with on this tour?
That not everyone on opposite sides of the aisle hate each other. You see that at the national level. You also see that you never see anymore a Republican and Democrat getting together on anything. It's the Democrats do their press conference, the Republicans do their press conference. If you remember when Governor Kean was the chairman of the 9/11 Commission, and he came out with the report, he wouldn't go anywhere unless Lee Hamilton, who was the vice chair, who was a Democrat, was next to him. And then all of a sudden, the media couldn't make it a partisan issue. Well, you don't see that anymore. How many times do you see a Republican and Democrat in the United States Senate, even on a bill where they agree, even a bill that they co-sponsor, they're almost not allowed to be with each other because they're considered traitors. And I want to tell people, just because you agree with a Democrat or you disagree, or if you agree with the Democrat, you're not a traitor to your party. And people come up to you and go like this, you sound like a Democrat. You mean because I supported one bill that the Democrats support? And no, loyalty, this is a given. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not 100% with anybody or any party. Not 100%.
It's hard to, you can't be. Not in this day
You
and age.
shouldn't be.
You shouldn't be is right. The story I tell is when I was lucky enough to be elected and fortunate enough to be in the assembly, one of the advices, I got a little bit of advice from my father, whether I asked for it or not. And I wish he was around today, but one of his pieces of advice was make sure you have a bottle of scotch in your drawer. My father was in the assembly, and I looked at him with that puzzled look, and he said, you're going to solve more problems and get more done with that bottle of scotch than you are standing there debating the issues of the day. That's how and you know what? For quite a while, it was the way it worked. We do need to do a little better now, and there's no doubt about that. So talk to me about, do you think that the civil discourse that we're talking about here and trying to address, particularly with college students, how do you think that's working with everyday citizens? You've touched upon it a little bit with some of the streams.
Not too well.
No.
Look, occasionally I'll meet somebody who wants to talk about the issue or say, I understand this. Most people are soundbite warriors. They heard a soundbite, and now they're going to scream at your face about that soundbite. I like this, well, or, they'll say, I hate Trump, I hate Biden. I say, well, stop. What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about immigration? Let's talk about immigration. You want to talk about crime? Let's talk about crime. Don't talk about, I don't want to talk about personalities here, okay? And there are parts of personalities of both I'm not crazy about. Let's talk about the issue. Then you have to have information. You want to debate something like immigration, you got to have some information. That's a lot harder than just hating somebody. What do you want to do with asylum cases, people from Cuba? What do you want to do with Ukrainian asylum cases? How do you want to deal with somebody in detention? Do you want to hold them in detention until they're deported? What do you want to do? These aren't some issues. If you just want to go and hate, and that's what people want to do.
Yeah, the people want. It feels like there's just a lot of absolutes now. I hate. My position is absolute. I can't. Well, you can always maneuver. You can always. It's nothing wrong with having two ears that not only hear but listen.
How tough are solutions, though? You've drafted hundreds of bills. You have to. It's complicated, and if you're going to come up with a piece of legislation, it's work and it's complicated, and you have to think of the consequences. If I just go like this, I hate Republicans, I hate Democrats, I hate the Green Party. You hear things like my party goes, the Green scam or something like. So you mean everything about doing something environmentally green is wrong? Like, I just can't stand these terms that people use, which to me are sound bites.
Labels.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In the few minutes we have left, I do want to. So we're going to be at a couple different, I believe. Help me here, John. I think we're going to be at Rutgers,
Eagleton, then Blaustein. Ramapo just booked us. Union College of New Jersey.
I believe that's
because you got to say because there's another Union College and you got to be careful, right? Union College of New Jersey. And then we heard from FDU, we've heard from Montclair State, but those I think are booked already.
Okay. And with a little bit of luck, hopefully we change some minds as well.
Well, I hope so. Look, I've said a lot of times you've given a lot of your life to public service, and I think people should appreciate that, whether Republican or Democrat.
In reflection on this, we've chatted about this. There's many times in American history, right? And I think before, when we were having an earlier chat, we reminded of Joseph McCarthy, right? It's not that long ago. It's the lifetimes of many that are still here with us. And then you realize, well, what's the difference today? And maybe it's social media, maybe it's the phone, but it's the obligation of folks like us that are fortunate enough to be in public life to maybe help with a civil dialogue along the way.
we want to tell students that it's all not us versus them. It's us, and we may disagree on things, but we don't hate each other, and we shouldn't. And if we don't stop that, we're going to see more violence.
We're all in this together, and that's the message. It has been my absolute honor to have my friend, tour mate, coming up soon on our civility tour, Senator Jon Bramnick from District 21, right next door. John, thanks so much for spending a few minutes.
And I'll be at the NJ PAC doing comedy on November 7th. That's a Friday, and that'll be all laughs, no politics, pure fun. NJ, and I'm giving all the money to njpac.org, so I'm not taking any money.
NJ PAC, November 7th. See John there for comedy. See us on for dialogue. And thanks, everybody, for joining us for another Cup of Joe. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, appreciate it.
That's a wrap on this episode of A Cup of Joe, hosted by Senator Joseph Cryan. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll see you again for another cup.